Hi guys, it's Sadie. Welcome back to the Hear Me Out podcast. I am currently sitting crisscross applesauce. I came to the studio wearing heeled boots, like high leather heeled boots, and I decided that last episode when I was wearing sneakers and just kind of crisscross applesauce in the chair, I felt a lot more comfortable, and these chairs in the studio aren't exactly conducive to sitting cross-legged, but I'm gonna make it work. You know, when you're sitting on a stool and your heels, if you're sitting any way but with your 2 feet on the ground, your heels will kind of like slide off and you're constantly bringing them back in. That's kind of the situation, but I honestly think that is better than being in the boots and, you know, having one leg over the other. And I don't know, it just feels all too official. Sometimes I like to have a presence with the boots, but when I'm in the studio, as you may or may not know, I just like to keep it casual. So anyway, how we doing, guys? It is currently Wednesday filming this, and it's daytime. This is one of the times during the day where I feel honestly more existential during the day than I do at night, which seems a little backwards to me. At night, when people go to bed and I'm normally up decently late, my mind doesn't roam. My mind is actually pretty quiet, which I think it would be the other way around. But when I'm kind of just going about my day, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've been trying to determine whether or not caffeine makes me anxious as well, because I've been having coffee consistently for the first like coffee with a decent amount of caffeine, as in more than one shot of espresso, or the girl math in my head when I'm home. When I'm home in Pennsylvania, I mean, we have a Mr. Coffee machine sort of thing, and so it's hot coffee, and in my head, hot coffee doesn't have that much caffeine. One glass of, or one mug of hot coffee is 1/4 of an iced coffee in my head. So I'm just throwing random numbers out there, but it's not nearly as much. So I'll like have a trillion cups of that in one day and feel fine. I mean, the effects are fine, but then recently I'm trying to determine if I get mini shakes or if my mind is going haywire, particularly after that. But I don't think so. I think it's just something during the day, which is a bit unfortunate because I do find myself a morning person versus a night person. In my soul, I feel that way, but in my actions, I'm a night person. But anyway, on my walk here, and even this morning, when you're mulling over your thoughts, especially when you know you need to kind of present something. So here I am in the studio needing to record something. And throughout the week, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about and what I wanted to present to you guys, maybe what's on your mind, whatever. And I don't know. A few different subjects crossed my mind by the time this episode is out. Depending on the title, you will know if we cover all of them or maybe just one. But so anyway, the word fulfillment has been kind of floating around my head a lot recently, and I'm feeling airier than I normally do, which is a good sign. So naturally, I'm wanting to kind of take a step back, understand where this is coming from so I can continue to do it. And I think part of that is honestly, I'm taking 18 credits this term, which is more than average. Normally, the average is about 12 to 16. I'm taking 18 credits, yet my classes are, the workload is more manageable than I've found in the past. Or I don't know, maybe I've just developed tools and I'm shortchanging myself. But yeah, I don't know, that maybe that's part of it. But I also think that my relationships with people this has been a year. The past 6 months, frankly, has been a time of reflection on relationships and relationships really presenting themselves to me, or at least I'm more in tune to them, if that makes sense. It's not necessarily that signs of a good relationship, bad relationship, that they were never there, but for some reason, I'm more, even though I've always been a relationship oriented person and I really value deep connections with people and all of that stuff. I mean, I know when it's not there, you know, but I don't know. I think that I'm in a place where I have enough deep relationships to go around. And I consider myself extremely lucky. And talking about friendship always makes me really emotional. And I don't know if you feel the same, but if you're listening to this podcast and you can think of someone, maybe someone has already come to mind, who is your bestest friend, or even more interestingly in my head, someone who isn't necessarily your quote unquote best friend by, other standards in terms of how often you see them, how often you talk to them, whatever. Maybe you go months without talking to this person, but you just pick up right where you left off. Or then even there's another layer, I think a lot about relationships, where I'm maybe not the direct connection. I would consider ourselves friends, but there's normally a quote unquote connector friend in the middle. For example, maybe you wouldn't go to coffee one on one with this person, but you would find yourself in a trio out to coffee with this person, or something. Maybe that's making sense if you have someone in your life that you value a lot and they bring a lot of energy and you look forward to seeing them, but for whatever reason, you just aren't really one-on-one a lot. That might sound strange, but a few people come to mind when I think about that. It's a beach question that comes up a lot. I remember talking with my parents this past summer in terms of who is someone you not exactly even feel the most yourself around, but you feel seen in, and you always leave them with more energy than you showed up to hanging out with, things like that. So, and specifically with the caveat of niche, maybe all of these things are true to your closest friends, but then having that niche layer, having that like connector friend dynamic that is factored into it. If you had to pick a more niche person in your life, I'm always so interested what side characters, quote unquote, for maybe lack of a better term, comes into that conversation. But yeah, that does randomly come up. I don't know why, but I'm digressing a lot. But anyway, talking about friendship makes me incredibly emotional because it's such a specific type of love. And not to dwell on this point too much, because it's not for pity that I say this, but I know what life feels like when you don't have friends, and I also know what life feels like when you have friends but they're all shallow relationships. And that's not to say that the people you're just not super close with but friends are shallow. That's not what that means. But for whatever reason, you're not having a connection, and even when you work at it, maybe it's not there. Maybe you just value different things. Maybe there's certain, just, a lot of things tied up that for whatever reason you're not clicking, or maybe you didn't invest time and whatever. So I've definitely had phases in my life that it makes it really easy to or maybe I should put it as sadness finds you a lot easier, versus it like makes it easy to do anything as if it's like a choice. I find that sometimes emotions aren't a choice, and I know my dad always says, like, you can choose how to feel about things, particularly anxiety, which we always get in little tiffs about. But I think it's just a fact, and there's a bunch of science around it. I'm sure I don't have any literature to quote right now, but sadness finds you a lot easier when you don't have people in your life who are not obligated to be there for you. And I mean, I guess no one's really obligated to be, looking out for you, be there for you. I'm fortunate enough to have family where it does feel like an obligation. Not that they make it feel that way, but in terms of like blood means something, I'm very fortunate to have that tight knit group. And I can confidently say that my extended family even has saved my life. And again, I'm this is going in 80 trillion different places, but to all loop back to friendship and how fulfillment can present itself in these little corners and things when you have people who actively choose to platonically love you. It is a emotion that I try often to put words to, and this and I fail to finish that thought, and I fail to do so, and I'm not thinking that I'm going to do so today. But with all of this said, I find it sometimes isolating, and maybe I've been cutting myself off mid-thought so much recently, and it's really something I need to get better at, and I've become better at sensing when I do it. So then I'll be mid-thought, and then I'll say 4 words contributing to another thought, and then I circle back and I'm like, wait, that makes no sense to whoever's listening to me, because there was like no conclusion or anything to like anything concrete to actually build off of. So I'm sorry, but I'm just laughing at myself because now I'm in my head about it, and I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together. But excuse me, I'm gonna pause and have a sip of water real quick. Anyway, so as I've said many times on this podcast, I am a very deep feeler, sometimes deep thinker, and with all of this specifically connected to friendship, I know how you can only really know how you are feeling, whether you like it or not, even when people are very open, vocal about how they are feeling. It's a bit of a mind fuck in my head, because you can never fully 100% know, even if you think you know like 99%. You're only ever in your own head. And so with that, I'm constantly questioning, well, how do other people view friendships? It's almost, for whatever reason, because I think in society the romantic love has become such a stressor, I guess maybe, not necessarily a stressor, excuse me, but it's always a topic of conversation, and it's more of an active effort to find media that talks about friendship when it's 100% platonic friendship, never any jokes of romance, allusion to romance, whatever. For some reason, I'm of the impression that quote unquote society, I hate saying that, but I mean, I can only really speak in generalizations to this. Society has placed a value on romantic friendship in a way that I haven't experienced with platonic friendship. And then I think a fallout of that, or an effect of that, is I then am constantly questioning, well, I feel friendships so deeply, and I feel as if I have soul ties to people genuinely, but do other people feel the same? Like, am I alone in this? I don't know. And that, to then return to my point about how it can be isolating, I think that's more just an attachment, maybe like an anxious attachment thing of mine, because then, and a words of affirmation love language thing, I'm slowly accepting that words of affirmation are my love language, and I think that can also be tied to acts of service in this, because it's just nice every once in a while. I don't find I need constant affirmation, which is why I like hate to say that out loud, because I feel like the admitting that your love language might be words of affirmation, it just feels so needy, and it is almost implying that you need it constantly. But that's like not how I'm needing it. Just every once in a while, I'm elated when someone expresses, or at least tries to express, the depth of their friendship, or at least nods to an appreciation of it. And sometimes that's extreme. Shout out to my friend Katie, who her handwriting is literally on my back, because like tattooed. I mean, I we have a Delwater Gap song lyric from the song called Too Philly, if you're familiar with it. And the lyric is written in Katie's handwriting, and my handwriting is on her back. And I just never thought that I would have a friendship as deep as the one that I have with her, to the point where I would want to tattoo it on me. You know what I mean? And so again, that's an extreme example, but the other day, Josh, I'll put him on blast for this, because you guys maybe met him for the last episode. Tune into the episode directly before this, asking college boys questions girls are too afraid to ask. That's a fun one. A lot of you guys liked it. But if you're needing a reference, a face, Josh, we were talking the other day, and it was like a late night conversation, and it was 2 a.m. or something. I don't know. And it just kind of came up naturally. Again, it's never like a begging thing, but when these conversations fall in my lap, then it's like, ah, yes, this is speaking to me. But he very kindly said, well, Sadie, it surprises me that you doubt for 1 second that any of us would take a bullet for you. And I was like, I know you would, Josh. Like, and he kind of sensed the hesitation in my voice. But I was like, I know you would, but I mean, I don't know about the other guys, which, not, again, this is not a reflection of them at all. I think it's just a reflection of me. But I was like, I don't know, like, even if you would, like, and he just kind of let me finish my thoughts, and then had said, no, like, we would take a bullet for you. And obviously, I'm saying it on this podcast now. This was I said the other day, but this was maybe like 3 weeks ago at this point, maybe a month ago even. And so then situations like that are often the ones that are in my head as core memories with people. And so it just helps me breathe, and again, it's interesting then how life feels when you have these deep relationships, especially when you are not necessarily someone who has always experienced that. And I've often found myself kind of, yearning is a weird word for it, but it's really the only verb that comes to mind, kind of just like yearning for that soul tie to people. Because then again, in the media that I did seek out, where I did see platonic friendship represented in everything, like, it was just something I was so jealous of. And I feel like that's a fair thing to be jealous of, because again, in my perspective, it wasn't from a lack of trying. It wasn't from a lack of investing time into people. Because again, these like soul ties, I keep using that phrase, but they don't just necessarily fall into your lap. And even when they do, it's almost like you have to grab onto them while you can, and pour your heart and time into those things, so then it can continue to be so. And yeah, I think it was a mix of just like, I needed to wait a little bit for my people, or no, it really was just kind of that, because I had always been the friend who I show love in terms of like acts of service. In it just end of thought there. I always love DIYing things for people. I was always the handmade card person. I don't think I've ever bought someone a card in my life. I've always handmade them, and gifts a lot of the time. I if I'm I just love giving gifts. I was talking about this recently, where I love giving gifts when you know it's a good gift. When you truly thought of something for that person. It wasn't just kind of like a, I don't know what to get them, but like they are a gold jewelry person. Maybe I'll just get them a pair of earrings, whatever. I mean, that's still a good gift, but I mean, when something you see something and you immediately think of that person, and then you buy it and you wait 4 months to give it to them for their birthday, or maybe you don't wait, maybe you just give it to them right there. But I don't know, like recently, it was my friend Quinn's birthday. Quinn, who's been on this podcast, and her or recently, today is literally her birthday when I'm filming this. Happy birthday, Quinn. But her gift is in the mail. It didn't come in time, but I'm so excited to give it to her. And I literally texted and I was like, Quinn, I'm so sorry. Like, I just need to share my enthusiasm for this gift. I really hope you like it. Obviously, it'll come with a receipt, but like, maybe that was awful of me because she's gonna feel pressured to like it. And she said, Sadie, I'm gonna like it no matter what. I'm sure. But I just things like that. Okay, so I won't really go down giving more examples. That's like not really needed. What was my point in acts of service to people? Oh gosh, I hate when I do this. Today I'm more scatterbrained than normal in terms of just going on any tangent that pops into my mind. Maybe that thought will come back to me. But then I kind of want to touch on the point of fulfillment. I kind of want to move on to then how that word that's been in my mind a lot, as I mentioned earlier, what that connection is, and that is kind of the answer to then my vague statement of, well, how life can feel. Well, life can feel really fulfilling when you have deep friendships. And then when I was mulling over that word, I started kind of thinking about fulfillment differently, because fulfillment is often tied to jobs, tasks. I don't know, that's how I have personally seen fulfillment as, or again, romantic love and seeking it out and investing in that, and then kind of feeling fulfilled by someone making, let's say, a commitment to you for life, and you honor such commitments and feel fulfilled maybe on days like a wedding or something like that. I don't know. But then all of a sudden, deep friendships finally find their way into my life and give me the opportunity to like invest in them and keep them. And I just started thinking, well, what if fulfillment isn't so much. I actually wrote it in my notes app this morning in case I forgot it on my walk over here. Fulfillment isn't an end destination, such as the end of a project or even end of life, where then you're kind of reflecting on it and you can say yes or no, were you fulfilled? And then I said it's, and just my cursor is blinking at me. So maybe, but then where I was going with that is that fulfillment is almost a choice. And I think, does that even make sense to me? Figuring it out in real time. If fulfillment is a choice, maybe that looks like just I'm a big energy person in terms of I don't know so much about a higher power, but I respond to energy, and I love the idea of manifestation and all that good stuff. So like using vocabulary such as soul tie, energy, all that stuff, you just kind of feel it. It's just there, where you feel a little more alive, a little more awake, a little more like yourself. And it's almost a pulse more than, in my head, this is how I'm envisioning it. It's almost like a pulse, a little like heartbeat versus some big sun or whatever. But it just hints at itself. And that's as far as it will go until then you pursue it and invest in it. And then it can become a bigger thing. But so then, like, in doing that, it, like, fulfillment can be a choice, and choosing it looks like following that energy again, really just like thinking out loud and following this train of thought live. But and then so it's relationships that can present that, it's work that actually means something to you. So like you can find fulfillment in work, but it's an ongoing thing. I don't know. I just think maybe not so much that the traditional narrative of being fulfilled by a project and like looking back on it, this is not all to say that that's wrong or it cancels out or whatever. It's more the idea that it's not only that. It's not only limited to a retrospective thing and etc. It can be more than that in addition to that. And yeah, I don't know. So I just think, you know, you're investing in the right relationships when you have that energy you can't necessarily describe. When you feel really yourself, when you look forward to meeting with those people, when they don't make you feel stupid for being ambitious, and like when you voice ideas. Someone just like knocked something down on the other side of this door. Hello? Is everyone chill? Anyway. Maybe this is all sounding a little elementary, but maybe this is just me encouraging you or myself to, you know, follow what your head and your heart knows is worth your time. It's because it's funny how when you know something, someone is not worth your time, like maybe you don't just know, but I'm reflecting in personal experiences now, and I definitely know. But it's funny how those relationships become so small, so irrelevant, so easy to like laugh off when those relationships provide moments that make you feel small, or that make you feel not valuable, that make you feel basically a lot of bad things. It's interesting to want that, to have wanted, or excuse me, not that, but to have wanted to feel the opposite of that, really, to have wanted to feel valuable and seen and all of these things, and to then not get that from that source, and then all of a sudden from left field comes a different person, a different thing that does make you feel how you wanted to feel from the other person. And for some reason, like, it's really hard to walk away from those people, whether it be like you're tied to them for one reason or another, like emotionally, or if something even a little more practical, I guess, like an organization, or some kind of commitment with a ring, if we're like getting extreme. It's really hard to walk away from those things when something other than your emotions are keeping you there. I actually think, in my personal experience, it has been hard and yet easier compared to the alternative to walk away from people and things that don't serve me when my emotions are the only thing tying me there. Because I will say, I do have a really strong regard for myself and what I deserve, and I feel very strongly that I deserve respect, and my self-respect is of utmost importance to me. So the idea that I would continue to do something that just damages my sense of self-respect and whatever, like, I have walked away from relationships with people that it's been excruciatingly painful. And I mean crying, or even more of a telltale sign of how excruciating it is for me is when I don't cry, when I just kind of feel like empty and totally just at a loss, literally no tears left to cry. That's when you know for me. And I've done that almost unblinkingly in a few instances that come to mind. I've walked away from those relationships that I know don't value me. They don't serve me in any way, shape, or form. And somehow that's been easier than walking away from relationships that time or geographic location or some commitment over my head to an organization or whatever, I don't know, would just make it, I don't know. It just it's harder to walk away from those things. It's the worst, right? When you're kind of like tied to someone, and even when you break things off, like you're seeing them always and you still have to be civil. Not that you would never not be civil, but you have to be civil to their face versus it's a lot easier to be civil when it's through a screen or when they're not in the room but someone's talking about them and it's just kind of like, yeah, you nod and say no comment. But I don't know. But anyway, I'm happy to report back that I am investing time in people who also invest time in me. Kind of a parting thought also is that no one is entitled to your care and your love and attention and everything. And just entitlement, oh, it's so frustrating. But I have not been responding to people feeling entitled to my time in a way that I maybe would have 2 years ago, which would have looked like anger, pent up, probably, not really confronting it, whatever. I'm just kind of letting those noises, referring to entitlement as just like noises, whether they're literal or not, I would just let them fade to black because it's actually laughable. Again, it's interesting how you can just navigate emotions differently also when you see the alternative, when you see what you deserve, when you are currently feeling like what you deserve, and you can compare things, and it's so stark. And it's just kind of like, here on the one side is someone who feels entitled to my time, and yet they do not, like, I don't feel entitled to their time and care and love, and I'm investing into that relationship, yet they do feel entitled to mine and aren't doing the same, like they're not meeting me there. It's interesting how that dynamic has presented itself in my life, at least personally, and I have then not been responding to that with the anger that I mentioned earlier, any kind of like pent up pettiness, whatever. I've just not been acknowledging it at all. And if I do, it's for a laugh. And it's funny how easy it becomes to laugh at those things again when you have that alternative, when then on the other side is people who would take bullets for you, who really give you their all even when they're busy and etc. Like, they'll communicate and all of that good stuff. So I don't know. I think fulfillment and entitlement and all of these things have presented themselves recently, and I'm just kind of mulling over them in my head, and I am glad that the reason I'm feeling airy, as I started to say in the beginning of this episode, I'm really glad and fortunate that relationships are the reason for that. And the idea that it's in various pockets of my life. It's not just in my extended family. It's not just in one person here and there. But it's like, I don't know, just like when you give off this energy, then when you start accepting the love you deserve, not that you necessarily think you deserve, but that you deserve, to quote Works of Being a Wallflower. It's funny how then it almost becomes a slew of people. They just, once you start giving yourself to good people, the revolving door sometimes can just present itself. And it just takes that first person, that one investment, whatever, to then again realize anything that makes you feel other than good and valued is just not worth it. It's just not worth it. So I'm leaving this episode feeling like I do more times than not, which is I hope any of this made sense. I hope a single sentence, at least, in this whole episode makes sense. But I encourage you, again, to follow that pulse. Be in tune to where you feel yourself being dragged the littlest bit passively, so then you can follow up actively, taking steps in that direction. So then a pulse can become one big beautiful sunshine heartbeat of energy, if we're talking visuals. And then with that will come, the opportunity for 80 trillion other sunshine heartbeats, whether it's in the form of people or not. But I think starting with people and relationships, that's a good place to start. So I will see you guys next Sunday, as I always do, 10 a.m. every Sunday. And in the meantime, if you do not follow at HBU Hear Me Out on Instagram for all that is good and fun and extra, why don't you do that at HBU Hear Me Out on Instagram? All right. Much love and appreciation for your time, as always.